When I opened that basement door, I thought I heard a whisper. It wasn't from a ghost, but from something much more unsettling, a woman's voice calling my husband's name. It was past midnight. The house was quiet, heavy with silence that pressed against my skin. Our 2 kids were asleep upstairs. The dishwasher hummed in the kitchen, and the only light came from the faint yellow bulb in the hallway. I stood there, barefoot on the cold tile, wondering if I was just tired or if the loneliness I had been feeling lately was finally making me imagine things. Then I heard it again. A soft laugh. A woman's laugh. From the basement. My breath caught in my throat. We rarely went down there. It was mostly storage, filled with old furniture and the washing machine. And yet, the laugh was unmistakable and real. That was the first time I felt the chill of betrayal, even before I grasped what it was. I wish I could say I ran right down and confronted whatever was hiding in that darkness. But I didn't. I stood there, frozen, staring at the door handle while my mind screamed all the worst thoughts a wife could imagine. Then, behind me, I heard my husband's voice calm, almost too calm. "What are you doing up, Claire?" I turned around, and there he was, standing in the dim hallway, his face unreadable. That night, I didn't realize it, but I was looking into the eyes of a man who had been keeping a secret. So deep it would shatter everything I believed about our marriage. Before that night, I would have told you my marriage was fine. Not perfect, never. Perfect but solid enough to make me believe we were doing okay. Mark and I had been married for 11 years. We had 2 children, Lee 9, and Jacob 6. Our days held the kind of normalcy that you learn to take comfort in. Cereal bowls clinking in the morning. The smell of burnt toast. The rush of school drop-offs. And the quiet moments at night when the kids were asleep. And we'd sit on the couch watching something neither of us really cared about. He worked as a contractor, with long hours and an unpredictable schedule. I was a nurse at the local clinic. My days were spent tending to other people's pain, while I learned to hide my own behind a smile. We met in college, both of us a little lost and from families that didn't really understand us. Mark once told me that he didn't talk to his family anymore due to a falling out after his parents passed. He said he was better off without them. I never pushed. I thought that was a sign off. Now I know it was blindness. Our home was small but warm, a 2-story house in the suburbs, with a creaky staircase and a basement that always smelled faintly of detergent and damp wood. That basement used to be a space we ignored. Until it wasn't. I started noticing things before that night, small, forgettable moments that didn't seem to matter then. Like how sometimes Mark would come home and disappear downstairs for half an hour before dinner. He'd say he was checking on the boiler, fixing the wiring, or sorting through old boxes. Sometimes I'd find extra dishes in the sink, as if he'd eaten without me, though I hadn't heard him cooking. Once, Emily mentioned that she'd heard someone talking downstairs while playing in her room. I laughed it off, saying it was probably the TV from Venabor's house. But I remember how Mark looked at her, then sharp, almost alarmed before smiling it away. Those were the quiet cracks forming under the surface of our lives. I ignored them because that's what you do when you love someone. You make excuses for what doesn't make sense. It was a rainy Thursday evening when the first real clue appeared. Mark had gone out to get groceries, or so he said, and I was cleaning up after dinner. The kids were doing their homework at the kitchen table, crayons scattered everywhere. I went down to the laundry room to throw in a load before bed. When I opened the washing machine, there were clothes inside, women's clothes. Not mine. I remember holding up a lavender sweater, soft and neatly folded. It smelled faintly of vanilla lotion. I didn't use vanilla lotion. For a moment, I just stood there, my heart thudding so loudly I could hear it in my ears. My first thought, the simplest and most painful, was that Mark was cheating on me. But then, something about the clothes stopped me. They weren't new. They were worn and faded. Not the kind of clothes someone would leave behind after an affair. They felt lived in and used. I didn't say anything that night. When Mark came home, I smiled, served dinner, and pretended nothing was wrong. He was distant and distracted, glancing at his phone too often. I told myself I'd ask him in the morning. But I didn't. I was afraid of what the answer might be. That fear had been sitting inside me for days. It changed how I moved through the house, cautious and alert. I began to notice little things. The faint smell of perfume in the hallway. Crumbs leading toward the basement. A mug left on the counter with lipstick marks that weren't mine. Every time I looked at Mark, I searched his face for signs of guilt. And every time, he gave me that same gentle smile, the one that used to make me feel safe. But safety was an illusion, and love was about to turn into something unrecognizable. That night, the night I heard the laugh, was when everything began to unravel. I didn't know it then, but what waited for me behind that basement door wasn't another woman. It was something far worse. Something that would make me question not just my marriage but the very person I thought my husband was. That night, after hearing that laugh, I barely slept. Every sound in the house, the creak of the floorboards, the hum of the fridge, felt alive and charged with meaning. I kept turning to look at Mark sleeping beside me, his breathing steady and his face peaceful. And I wondered, how many lies can fit behind a peaceful face? By morning, I had convinced myself I was overreacting. Maybe it was the old pipes creaking, or my mind playing tricks on me. After all, I was exhausted working double shifts at the clinic, managing its school projects, and navigating the endless cycle of bills and groceries. I told myself, don't go digging for ghosts, Claire. You'll only find dust. But the dust had already started to move. The next few days were a blur of I almost caught Mark sneaking down the stairs at night. I nearly asked him why there was an extra plate drying by the sink. I almost checked that basement door while he was out. But almost became a habit, because confronting the truth means admitting something is wrong. I wasn't ready to break the fragile peace that held our family together. Then one afternoon, while Mark was at work, I went to fold laundry and noticed something strange. The basement door was slightly open, just enough for a sliver of darkness to peek through. A faint smell drifted up, something warm and unfamiliar. Not detergent. Not must. It was cooking. I froze. No one was supposed to be down there. I took a cautious step closer and heard its soft shuffling, a hum, like someone moving around quietly, singing under their breath. My pulse raced. I reached for the doorknob, then a sound that made me jump. The door slammed shut from the inside. I stumbled back, heart pounding. Silence. Nothing. My hands trembled as I whispered, "Hello? Is someone down there?" No answer. I waited 5 seconds, 10, 15. Then, from the other side, came the voice. A woman's voice. Calm, almost polite. "Please don't tell him I'm here." My knees nearly gave out. I ran upstairs and locked myself in the bathroom, my mind spinning. What did she mean, don't tell him? Who was she? Why was she in our basement? I tried to make sense of it, but nothing fit. I thought of the clothes, the laughter, the perfume. I thought of Mark's late nights and his distracted eyes. Every thread led back to one terrifying question. Had my husband been hiding another woman in our home? When Mark came home that evening, I couldn't look at him the same way. He kissed my cheek, asked about my day, and joked with the kids like nothing was wrong. But I watched him closely, every gesture, every glance. At dinner, he reached for his phone when it buzzed. He smiled faintly, typed something quickly, then put it face down beside his plate. A cold, heavy silence filled the space between us. "Who was that?" I asked. He looked up, startled, then shrugged. "Just a client. At 8:30 at night." He paused. "Deadlines. You know how it is." I nodded, pretending to accept it. But something in my chest tightened. I recognized that look, the tiny flicker of guilt in his eyes. It was the look of a man juggling a lie. The next day, I made a decision. If he wouldn't tell me the truth, I would find it myself. While he was at work, I went down to the basement. The first thing that hit me was the smell. Not musty or stale, but lived in. There was a faint trace of lavender soap, and something savory, like leftover soup. The air felt warmer, as if someone had been down there often. I strolled down the steps, each creak echoing in the stillness. Half of the basement was just boxes and tools. But in the corner, behind an old curtain, I saw something that twisted my stomach. A bed. A small cot with neatly folded blankets. Beside it was a nightstand with a lamp, a few books, and a cup of tea still warm. On the far wall was a photo. I walked closer. It was a picture of Mark, younger, smiling, standing next to a woman who looked just like him. My heart thudded painfully. I remembered something from years ago, a passing comment he had made once when we were newly married. "I used to have a twin sister, but we don't talk anymore." At the time, I'd laughed it off, thinking it was a joke. But standing there, staring at that photo, I realized it hadn't been. The woman in the picture wasn't just anyone. She was his twin. And she had been living in my basement. A rush of emotions hit me. Confusion, fear, betrayal. Why would he hide her from me? Why wouldn't he tell me she was here? Just then, I heard the basement door creak open behind me. Footsteps descended, slow, measured. Mark. He froze when he saw me standing there, holding the photo. "Claire, what are you doing down here?" His voice was steady, but his eyes betrayed him. A flicker of panic. "Who is she, Mark?" I asked quietly. "And why is she living here?" He exhaled sharply, rubbing the back of his neck. "It's not what you think." "Then tell me what it is." There was a long silence. He sat down on the edge of the cot, his hands trembling slightly. "Her name's Mara," he said finally. "My sister." "My twin." The words hung heavily in the air. "You told me you didn't talk to your family." "We don't," he said. "They cut her off. She's been through a lot. She had nowhere else to go. I was just trying to help her." "So, you hid her in our basement. For how long, Mark?" He hesitated. "Too long." "A while." "How long?" I pressed. His voice dropped to a whisper. "Almost a year." I felt something inside me snap, a quiet, aching kind of break. Not anger, not yet. Just disbelief. A year of lies. A year of someone living under my roof, eating my food, listening to my children's laughter from the shadows. He tried to explain that Mara was fragile, that she couldn't handle people, that he didn't want to burden me. But the more he talked, the more it all sounded like excuses. And behind every word, I sensed another truth hiding something darker. Because when I looked around that little corner of the basement, the books, the dishes, the photo, I realized something. Mara hadn't just been staying here. She had been living here. And she had made herself comfortable in ways I hadn't even noticed. That night, as I lay awake beside Mark, staring at the ceiling, I realized the truth wasn't over. Finding her was just the beginning. Soon, I'd learn that Mara wasn't just his secret, she was a threat. And she had already begun to weave herself into every part of our lives. After that night, everything in our house changed. Not loudly, not suddenly, but in subtle, suffocating ways. Like how silence feels different when you know someone else is listening. Mark swore he would handle it. He promised Mara would leave soon. He even said he'd explain things properly when the time was right. But the time never came. And Mara never left. For the first few weeks after I found out, I tried to act normal for the kids' sake. But normal felt like a performance now. Every breakfast, every bedtime, every small laugh with Mark felt staged, fragile. As if one wrong move could shatter the illusion. I found myself listening constantly for footsteps beneath the floorboards, the soft hum of the basement door. I could feel her there, even when I couldn't see her. It was like the house had grown another heartbeat. Mark started spending more time downstairs again. He said Mara was still getting settled, that she needed space and time to heal. I asked him what that meant, but his answers were always vague. She's been through a lot. She's not well. You wouldn't understand. Those 3 sentences became his shield. And every time I tried to push past it, he deflected with kindness, a kiss on the forehead, a gentle smile. That's how manipulators operate. I've learned, they use your love to build their lies. Then one morning, I went down to do laundry and found something that made my stomach drop. In one of the laundry baskets, not mine, not the kids', not Mark's, was a child's drawing. It was Emily's. A picture of our family, 4 stick figures holding hands. But there was a 5th figure now, drawn in the corner. A woman with long hair and a big smile. At the top, Emily had written in bright blue crayon, "Me, Mommy, Daddy, Jacob, and Auntie M." I held that paper in my hands for a long time, my chest tightening. Auntie M. Mara. She had met my children. Without my knowledge. Without my permission. When I asked Emily later, her answer chilled me. "She's really nice, Mommy. She gives us cookies sometimes when you're working, when I'm working." I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. "Yeah. She comes upstairs when Daddy says it's okay." I smiled so I wouldn't scare her. But inside, everything went still. Mark had promised me Mara stayed in the basement, that she needed to be there. But she wasn't staying down there anymore. She was creeping into our lives. That night, when Mark got home, I waited until the kids were asleep before confronting him. "Why is your sister talking to our children?" He looked up from his phone, frowning. "What are you talking about?" Emily said Mara's been upstairs. Giving them cookies. Spending time with them. He sighed. The kind of sigh that says you're overreacting. "Claire, she's family. They should know their aunt who's been hiding in our basement for a year." "Who did you lie to me about?" His jaw tightened. "You don't understand what she's been through. Then make me understand." "Mark. Because right now it feels like my entire life has been rewritten without my consent." He stood up. Towering over me, his tone shifting, no longer gentle, but sharp and defensive. I did what I had to do. She had nowhere to go. I wasn't going to let her end up on the street. And lying to me. Was that part of helping her, too? He didn't answer. Just looked away, his silence louder than any confession. After that fight, something broke between us. We still shared the same bed, but it felt like sleeping beside a stranger. I'd wake up at 3 a.m. and reach out, only to find his side cold and empty. And when I glanced toward the hallway, I saw the faint glow of light seeping from under the basement door. He was still going down there. Still choosing her over me. Weeks passed, and Mara began showing herself more often. I'd come home from work and find her sitting at the kitchen table, chatting with the kids as if she'd always belonged. Her smile was sweet, but her eyes were sharp, measuring me. She talked in a way that was both warm and biting. Compliments wrapped in thorns. "You must be so tired, Claire. It's amazing how you manage the kids and your job all by yourself," she'd say, while stirring her tea. "Mark tells me you've always been ... independent." The way she said independent felt like a knife dipped in honey. I tried to be civil, but there was an undercurrent, an invisible tension that filled every room she entered. Slowly, I realized she was doing something I couldn't quite name, turning the house against me. The first sign was subtle, the way the kids started preferring her cooking to mine. Then it was the small corrections she'd make when I spoke, as if she knew more about how to handle my children than I did. Even Mark began echoing her opinions. "Mara thinks Emily might need a different tutor. Mara says Jacob shouldn't eat so much sugar. Mara thinks you've been working too much." Every word chipped away at me until I started doubting myself, my choices, my worth, even my sanity. That's when I realized what she was doing. Not loudly, not obviously, but through quiet influence. She positioned herself as the calm, collected one, while I appeared emotional and paranoid. And Mark believed her. He always believed her. The breaking point came one Friday afternoon. I came home early from work, a rare day off. The house was quiet. The kids were at school. Mark was out on a job. But from the basement, I heard voices, hers and his. At first, I thought they were arguing. Then I realized they were laughing. Not the laughter shared between siblings. It was softer, closer. I crept down halfway, just enough to see through the gap in the railing. Mara was sitting on the cot, her hand on Mark's knee. He leaned toward her, whispering something that made her giggle. It wasn't romantic, not yet, but it was too intimate. I stood there, watching them, my mind refusing to process what my eyes saw. Was it betrayal, guilt, or something worse, dependency? Because in that moment, I realized something horrifying. Mark didn't just love his sister. He needed her, in ways I couldn't understand. And she knew it. She thrived on it. When I finally confronted him that night, I expected him to deny everything. Instead, I got something worse: apathy. "She's my sister, Claire. Don't make it sound dirty. Then stop hiding in the basement with her like it's a secret. She's all I have left," he snapped. "You don't know what we've been through. Then tell me," I pleaded. "Tell me why she's here. Why did you lie to me for a year?" He turned away. "You wouldn't believe me if I did." That was the night I realized he wasn't going to choose me. Not yet, maybe not ever. But I wasn't done. If I couldn't get the truth from him, I'd get it from her. The next morning, I waited until Mark left for work. He didn't kiss me goodbye this time. He just mumbled something about a long day ahead, grabbed his thermos, and walked out without looking back. The sound of the front door closing echoed like a final warning. I stood in the kitchen, my hands trembling around my coffee mug, staring at the basement door. That door had become something more than wood and hinges. It was a wall between two versions of my life. The one I thought I had, and the one that actually existed. That morning, I decided I was done standing on the wrong side of it. When I went downstairs, I expected silence. Instead, I found Mara already awake, sitting cross-legged on her cot, sipping tea as if she owned the place. She smiled when she saw me. "Good morning, Claire," she said softly, as if we were two friends meeting for brunch. "You're up early." Her voice was calm, too calm. Every word was measured, as if she'd rehearsed this conversation in her mind. I could see now what made her dangerous. It wasn't anger. It was control. That unsettling composure made you doubt yourself even when you knew you were right. I took a breath. "We need to talk." She tilted her head slightly, pretending to be confused. "About what?" "About you being here. About you lying to me. About you sneaking around my children." She didn't flinch. In fact, she smiled wider, a knowing, pitying smile. "Oh, Claire. You really don't understand, do you?" Her tone wasn't defensive. It was superior. Like she wasn't the intruder in my home, but the one doing me a favor by being here. "I understand that you've been hiding down here for a year," I said. "That you've made my husband lie to me. That you've inserted yourself into my children's lives. You make it sound so ugly," she said softly. "I'm just family, Claire. Isn't family supposed to help each other? Helping doesn't mean deceiving." She looked at me with that same detached patience you'd use with a child throwing a tantrum. "You wouldn't understand what it's like to lose everything," she whispered. "When our parents died, Mark was the only one who stayed by me. He promised he'd never abandon me again. And he hasn't. So, you let him ruin his marriage to keep that promise." Her smile faded slightly. "Marriage," she said, almost scoffing. "You think that's what you have. He walks on eggshells around you, Claire. You drain him. You smother him. He's happier when he's down here." Her words sliced through me. She said them so casually, as if she were describing the weather. And I hated that part of me believed her even for a second. "You don't know anything about our marriage," I said quietly. "So." "I know enough," she replied. "He tells me things. Things he can't tell you." I stared at her, my heart racing. "Like what?" She leaned forward, her eyes glinting. "That you don't make him feel seen anymore. That you're too busy playing nurse and mother to remember how to be a wife." My mouth went dry. It wasn't just what she said. It was the way she said it, with such ease, such certainty. She'd studied him. She'd studied us. And that's when I realized Mara wasn't just living in our basement. She had been slowly taking my place, one piece at a time. I left her there, and went upstairs, shaking. Every word she'd spoken replayed in my head, twisting and reshaping itself into doubts. By the time I reached the kitchen, I wasn't sure if I was furious or terrified. That night, after the kids went to bed, I decided I needed answers. Not from her, but from the truth itself. Mark always kept his laptop locked, but years of sharing a home teach you small things. Like that he always used our daughter's birthday as a password. I sat at the table, typing it in, my hands trembling. When the screen opened, I didn't know what I was looking for. Just something. Emails, messages, bank statements. And there it was. An account I didn't recognize. Thousands of dollars were withdrawn over months, transferred to a name I'd never seen. Mara, construction supply. My blood ran cold. She wasn't just living here. She was using us. Using him. When I clicked through the statements, I saw the pattern clearly, every withdrawal coinciding with one of Mark's paychecks. She'd been siphoning money through his business account, quietly and methodically. And the worst part, he'd been letting her. When Mark came home, I was waiting in the living room with the laptop open. "We need to talk," I said. He froze, seeing the screen. His eyes flickered from the numbers to my face. "Where did you? How long, Mark?" I interrupted, my voice steady, even as my hands shook. "How long have you been letting her take from us?" He rubbed his forehead and sighed, like I was being unreasonable again. "It's not what you think. Don't say that. Don't you dare say that again. You've said those words every time you lie." He didn't answer. He just stared at the floor, like a child caught stealing. "She needed help," he muttered, finally. "Just until she got back on her feet." "You call stealing our savings help? You call lying to me help?" He looked up then, his face tired and defeated. "You don't know her like I do, Claire. She's been through things. Stop it." I snapped. "Stop protecting her. What about me, Mark? What about our children? Don't we deserve your protection too?" Silence. He couldn't even look at me. And in that moment, I saw the truth plain, quiet, undeniable. It wasn't that he couldn't choose between us. He already had. And it wasn't me. For 2 days, I said nothing. I moved through the house like a ghost, doing the motions of life, making breakfast, folding laundry, answering my children's questions with empty smiles. But inside, I was making a plan. If he wouldn't protect us, I would. On the third night, I waited until Mark fell asleep, then went downstairs again. Mara was awake, reading a book by the lamp. She didn't seem surprised to see me. "Couldn't sleep?" she asked, as if we were old friends. I held up a small folder with the printed bank statements. "You've been stealing from us." She blinked once, then smiled faintly. "From you, maybe. Not from Mark." "It's our money," I said. "No, Claire. It's his money. He gave it to me." Her calmness made me shake. "You've taken everything from me," I whispered. "My trust, my home, my family." She stood slowly, closing the distance between us. "You never had him the way you think you did," she murmured. "He's always been mine." I took a step back. Her voice was quiet, but it had a chilling tone, possession. "He's my brother," she continued softly, "but you'll never understand what that means. We've been together since before you existed. You're just a visitor in his story." I stared at her, the woman who had lived beneath my feet, smiling at my children, whispering into my husband's ear, and finally saw what she really was. Not helpless. Not broken. But hungry. And she had already eaten her way through my life. That night, as I locked the basement door from the outside, I felt something new. Not fear, not anger, resolve. Because this house wasn't hers. It wasn't his anymore either. It was mine. And I was done living above their lies. I didn't sleep that night. Not because of fear, that had burned itself out long ago, but because of the clarity that came after it. It's strange how quiet the mind becomes when it finally stops hoping someone will change. There's no noise left, just the truth and what you're willing to do with it. By dawn, I had made up my mind. That morning, I woke the kids early, got them dressed, and dropped them at my sister's house. I told her it was just for the weekend, that Mark and I needed to sort through some things. She gave me a look that said she knew I wasn't telling the whole story, but she didn't push. When I got home, Mark was in the kitchen, coffee in hand, looking like he hadn't slept either. The air between us felt tense. "Where are the kids?" he asked. "Somewhere safe," I said. "We need to talk without them here." He frowned, already on the defensive. "If this is about Mara again, it's always been about Mara," I said quietly. "It's been about her for a year, Mark. About her, and the lies you built around her." He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "You don't understand what she means to me." "Then make me understand," I said, my voice steady. "Because, from where I'm standing, it looks like she's stolen from us, manipulated our children, and turned you into a stranger." He slammed his mug down on the counter. "She's my sister. She needed me." "And what about me?" I whispered. "Did I ever get to need you? Did you even notice how alone I've been in this house?" He didn't answer. I took a breath, pulling the printed bank statements from my bag. "I know about the money, Mark. About the transfers. The fake business account." His face went pale. "Claire, no, stop. I'm done listening to excuses. I've contacted the bank. They're opening an investigation. You can tell them whatever version of the story you want, but I've got the evidence." His shoulders slumped, the fight draining out of him. For the first time, I saw the weight of his choices on his face. Not guilt, not yet, just exhaustion. "She made me feel like I owed her," he said quietly. "After our parents died, she was all I had. She never let me forget it. And you never asked what that cost me," I said. Then the basement door creaked. Mara's voice floated up calm and collected, as always. "You two should stop fighting. It's embarrassing." I turned. She was standing at the bottom of the stairs, arms crossed, a faint smirk on her lips. Like she was watching a show she'd already seen the ending of. "This is between us," I said. "No, Claire," she replied smoothly. "This has always been between me and Mark." She looked at him then, her tone softening. "You don't have to stay here. You know that, right? You could come with me. We could start fresh." Mark stared at her, and for a terrifying second, I saw a flicker of possibility in his eyes. That quiet temptation, the pull of old loyalty over love. I stepped forward, my voice low but sharp. "Go ahead, Mark, choose right here. Right now." Silence. He looked from me to her, his wife and his sister, the two halves of a life he'd been trying to keep separate. "Mark," Mara said softly, reaching out a hand. "You know who's always been there for you." "And you," I said, my voice trembling, "know who's still standing here, even after everything." He closed his eyes and exhaled shakily. Then, without a word, he turned and walked toward Mara. For a second, my heart stopped. She smiled, triumphant, until he spoke. "You need to leave, Mara." Her face twisted. "What?" I said. "Leave. You've done enough damage." "No," she hissed, her voice suddenly sharp. "You don't mean that." "I do," he said quietly. "You can't stay here anymore." She stared at him, disbelief morphing into rage. "You think she'll forgive you? After everything? She'll destroy you, Mark." "Maybe I deserve it," he said. "But you don't get to decide anymore." For the first time, I saw something real flicker across her face. Not confidence, not control, but fear. She backed down the stairs, shaking her head. "You'll regret this," she whispered. "Both of you." And then she was gone. We heard the basement door slam, then the sound of her footsteps fading. I stood there, not relieved, not yet, just numb. Mark sank into a chair, his face buried in his hands. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "I thought I could fix it. I thought I could protect everyone." "You can't protect people by lying to them," I said. "You just end up losing both." He nodded, tears filling his eyes. It should have made me feel better. It didn't, because apologies don't rebuild trust, they just mark where it started to fall apart. The days that followed felt like walking through the wreckage of something sacred. Police came by once. I'd filed a report for the financial fraud. Mark cooperated and told them everything. Mara disappeared. No one could find her, not even her old friends. Part of me was terrified she'd come back. The other part hoped she would, so I could finally look her in the eye and ask why. But she never did. She vanished the same way she had lived in my house, quietly, like a shadow retreating from the light. Mark and I tried therapy after that. We sat in a small office with soft music playing, an air that smelled faintly of eucalyptus. He talked about guilt, obligation, and how Mara had used his need for redemption like a leash. I listened, but I couldn't feel sympathy anymore. Not then. Because while he was protecting his past, I was protecting what was left of our present. After a few months, I asked him to move out. Not out of cruelty, but because love can't survive in the same space where lies were built. He cried that night. I didn't. There's a point where tears become a luxury you can't afford anymore. I kept the house. I painted the basement door white. I turned the space into a small studio, with sunlight streaming through the tiny window and plants on the shelves. I refused to let it stay a place of shadows. The kids came back. We settled into a new rhythm, one without secrets breathing through the floorboards. Sometimes Emily asks about Auntie M. I tell her she's gone somewhere far away, where she can't hurt anyone anymore. And I mean it. It took me a long time to stop flinching when I heard footsteps at night. To stop expecting whispers in the dark. But now, when I walk through this house, I feel peace. A quiet, steady peace that comes from knowing I survived the truth. It's been over a year now. Sometimes, when I'm folding laundry or making breakfast for the kids, I catch myself thinking about how strange it feels to live without secrets in the walls. The silence used to scare me. Now, it feels like safety. I've learned that peace doesn't come when life stops being hard. It comes when you stop letting the wrong people live rent-free in your mind. After Mark left, I didn't hear from him for a few months. Then one day, a letter arrived. It was short, handwritten, and apologetic. He said he was in counseling and had finally realized how deep Mara's manipulation ran. He hoped that someday I could forgive him. I held on to that letter for a long time before putting it in a box with other things I didn't need anymore, like pictures, rings, and memories that had lost their warmth. I've learned that forgiveness isn't about letting someone back in. It's about moving on without carrying their weight anymore. The kids still ask about him sometimes. Emily remembers the good parts, the Sunday pancakes, the bedtime stories. Jacob is younger. He mostly remembers the fighting. When they ask, I tell them the truth, not the cruel truth, but the gentle one. Their father loved them, but sometimes grown-ups get lost in the wrong kind of love. The kind that makes you forget who you were supposed to protect. It's hard to explain to children how love can be both comforting and confining. But I try, because I don't want them to grow up mistaking loyalty for sacrifice. I still work at the clinic. The days are long but steady. I've made new friends, people who remind me that life keeps growing even when it feels closed off for good. On weekends, I take the kids to the lake. We sit by the water, throw stones, and talk about everything and nothing. It's simple and honest. After years of living inside lies, honesty feels like fresh air. There's a small photo hanging in the hallway now, just me and the kids, laughing, with sunlight spilling across our faces. Every time I pass it, I remember the woman I was, the one who kept quiet, who doubted her instincts, who thought love meant enduring. And I silently thank her for finally choosing herself. That's the hardest lesson life teaches you. Sometimes, the people you'd do anything for are the ones who teach you how to stand alone. Losing the person you thought you couldn't live without is how you finally start living. I haven't seen Mara since the day she left. But occasionally, when I pass by the basement door, I pause, not out of fear but reflection. That place taught me something no one ever had. Monsters don't always hide under your bed. Sometimes, they sit at your dinner table. Sometimes, they smile like family. And yet, I don't hate her. Hate is just another kind of chain. I've spent too much of my life breaking free to start forging new ones. Wherever she is, I hope she finds something like peace, far from the home she nearly destroyed. Because I already found mine. It took time. It took pain. It took learning how to live with what's left when love burns out. But I'm here whole, even with the scars. When I watch my children sleeping now, safe and unafraid, I know that everything I lost was the price of keeping this. Peace, truth, freedom. If you're listening to my story tonight, maybe you've experienced your own quiet betrayal. Maybe you've had to choose yourself after someone else broke you. And if you have, I hope you know this: you are not weak for staying too long. You are not broken for finally leaving. You are just human, learning, healing, and rebuilding. One truth at a time. Would you have done what I did? Would you have locked that door and walked away, or tried to save what was already lost? Tell me what your heart says in the comments. And if you stayed until the end of my story, thank you. Your support reminds me that even after the darkest times in our lives, there's always a way back into the light.